Welcome back to the Better Roadways podcast. As usual, I am your host, James Golden, CEO of Pavement Management Group. And I was talking with my marketing team last week, and we were taking a look at analytics from our LinkedIn page. We do a lot of content on the Pavement Management Group LinkedIn page, just trying to add value to the marketplace. That is our approach. We want all of you in this industry to have a good concept, working knowledge of all things that affect you in pavement management land, as we like to say around here. And, it came up, what was our most popular post, here recently? And you see the topic that we've got right here. I'm going to announce it to you. It is the harsh realities of worst to first. So let me open up this podcast by introducing you to that concept. The reality is the majority of roadway asset managers, roadway owners, that's all of you as municipalities, townships, villages, counties, all of you out there managing your road networks. What I see is a massive percentage of you all doing this worst to first strategy. The process is very simple. It's coming to some form of a conclusion of where the worst roads in the city are any given year ahead of budget season, taking a look at that list, and then employing your mill and overlay strategy, talking to the contractor, putting it out to bid, getting an idea of how much per square yard this is going to cost, and then starting with the worst road and doing as many miles as possible until you run out of money. And what's happening is one of the biggest harsh realities is those of you that are doing that and you have yet to keep up with the inflation of construction costs just in the last 3 years alone, let alone the last several years, what you're finding is your impact is just not going where it used to be, say a decade ago. No better case study than where I was actually at yesterday on site with a client of ours. We were presenting to City Council, live on television, Facebook, YouTube, the whole 9 yards, all published, all documented. You'll probably see our marketing team leverage some of that content so you can see it for yourself. But the premise is very simple. This agency's budget has not changed in the last decade. We'll just use a round number of around $500,000 being thrown at the roadway network, doing worst to first. And what are we finding? You fast forward 10 years, the road conditions have dropped 16 points over the 10-year period because the impact has become less and less and less because of the cost of construction activities. What does that mean for this agency? They were at an 80 PCI. They're now at a 64 PCI. I think we can all agree, for those of you listening to this, that's not good. I would rather be responsible for and manage a road network with a PCI of an 80 than a 64. Harsh reality, number one. The budget has not changed. And this mindset has put you in a position where your roadway network has continued to lose in ground year in, year out. And now the rent is due. That's what we say, and for a lot of different things, right? We neglected it. Now the rent is due. Because I want to say it was a staggering 60+% of their roadway network fell into the fair and poor category. What do we know? We know that those are now going to be candidates for none other than mill and overlay opportunities. That's all we've got. You can use the average math and say 125 to 250K per mile based on that mile. This city is on a 35-year life cycle. That's harsh reality number two. If you're employing a worst to first strategy, your conditions are guaranteed to have dropped year over year if you have not kept up with inflation for your annual budget. And then the sad part is all of these roads that are available for mill and overlay, that number, that condition category has grown. So the backlog has grown. And now here you are, 35-year life cycle. That means you mill and overlay it and you're not getting back out to that pavement to do it again for 35 years. That's what that means. If you want worst to first to be your strategy, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I can justify that if you want. I'm a huge proponent for preservation, preventive maintenance, life extension, of course, maximizing your budget. But many cities out there probably do have a tax base to support the initiative. It's a hefty one. I will tell you that right now. If you want to do that, you can do it, but you got to get to a 10-year life cycle at a minimum. What does that mean? It means you've got to have a healthy enough budget to keep up with all of these costs to be able to pave the roadway, mill and overlay. By the way, the asterisk here is I'm assuming and hoping if you're milling and overlaying, please, pretty please tell me you are performing the right amount of partial full depth repairs where need be, number one. Okay, we're just going to assume that's happening for you. Now you need to come back every 10 years. That's the process. That's how you're going to fight the old complaint line. The complaint line is all those PCIs at or below a 50. The harsh reality number two is that is expensive. It's probably a 3 to 4x cost per year of what you're already spending if that's what you want to do. So there you go. Now, these harsh realities, as I keep mentioning, of the worst to first, are really just summarized in the amount of time it takes for you to get back to a pavement. Going back to my on-site presentation to council, one of the questions that we're always getting from the public or from the councils is like, hey, when can my road be done? When can this road receive something? And you as the roadway manager, you're forced to go look at that and say, I'm sorry, council member, it looks like I'm not going to be able to touch that road for another 8 years. I mean, can you imagine? Of course you can. You're in there doing the same thing I am from a presentation perspective. That answer is more than likely not going to align with their goals, outcomes, and expectations. So again, your job from a presentation perspective, you've got to be able to tell the story of your network, right? There's no better way to do that than implementing, a turnkey pavement management program. You update that thing every single year in terms of data, maintenance and repair, and history. You'll have all the numbers. So in our case, it was very simple. In 15 minutes, we're able to go tell council, hey, just want to let you know, we understand the goals and objectives. We want better roadways here in this city. Historically, this is what we've been spending. Historically, this is what the cost of construction has done. Historically, these have been the impacts. We were doing 12% impact. Now we're only making 3% impact. You can tell those stories. In these 2 years right here, you see the numbers are below our typical annual budget. That's because council borrowed money from the paving budget to go do X, Y, and Z. Tell the story. Facts are just one part of it. You got to be able to tell the story. Now, here's the other side of it. It's one thing to have pretty conditions on a map saying, see, here's where all the red, failed, poor, good, excellent roads are. It's another to quantify the network for the right treatment, the right pavement, the right time, stick a real budget amount available right there, and then provide projections because they need to see this stuff. If we continue on this worst to first, harsh reality number 3, and I'll put a button on it all. If we continue to follow a worst to first process, and if our budget is not keeping up with inflation, not only is our road network expected to deteriorate further, but we expect to drop an additional 10 points over the next 5 years. That's stating the facts and telling the story all at the same time. Here's the good news. You want to do a worst to first strategy and get on a 10-year life cycle? We got to quadruple the budget. There it is in full color for them to see. Then you have what's probably more of a common middle ground. What if we take our existing budget just for next year alone? Because your council's on 1-2 year terms. They're not going to be here for the next 4 or 5 years as you implement a plan. You're going to be in this constant state of education. So here's a suggestion. Look, I'm going to take that $500,000 next year. That's what we've been talking about from a budget perspective. And I'm actually going to spend 30-40% of it on keeping the good roads good. I'm going to keep those good. I'm still going to do the worst to first on the other 50-60% of the budget, 70% of the budget. And I'm expected to make an additional 3% impact in doing that. Well, that's a win-win. You were only going to make a 3% impact worst to first. Now you can make a 6-7% impact. It's a gain. That's a profit in terms of a positive for your council to get around, for your public. That's being transparent and showing where those impacts are going to go, on the maps. So this is how you start changing the mindset and educating on the reality of your situation. Those are the harsh realities of worst to first. Hope this helps just one of you out there. And we'd love to know how we're doing. How are the Better Ways? How is the Better Ways Roadway podcast, the Better Roadways podcast, impacting you on the professional level? What are some topics you'd like to see? Heck, would you like to come on the show and do a side by side with me and have a conversation? We're open to all those things. So until the next one, keep paving the way.